To this workshop, the Supporting Non-Native English Speakers in All Classes. CTE asked me to do something a while back, and they were pretty open about what to do, and so, I thought this might be useful for like a wider range of people, if there were people outside of adult ed coming, or people in GED, which I'm really happy some people from GED are here. Like I was saying, we can be really flexible with this because it's a smaller group. So feel free to stop me or slow down, speed up. I'll pay attention to kind of that sort of thing. Since you guys, it's such a small group, you guys want to just tell each other your names real quick?
Oh,
a bit more comfortable, yeah.
Hi Jim, you guys all know each other, right?
We do, so I felt bad for you.
So that's okay, so I'm a newbie. I only started a month ago. I am hired to be working in the respiratory care program once it opens in the fall. We're going through accreditation right now, so I'm technically mid management, but I'm going to, because I have no one to teach, so but I will be faculty in the fall.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
That's great.
super excited about it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm Nancy,
Hi Nancy.
and I'm in the adult ed program as well.
And Jim, you mentioned you're in GED math. Susan, hi Susan.
Hi, Susan.
Hey.
No, you're good. You're good. We're happy to have more people. Susan is from the GED math department as well. So let's see. We'll dive right in. When I made this up, well, I feel like it's less necessary to introduce myself, but just to you specifically, I guess. I'm the Director of Adult Education Faculty and Instruction. I started doing that since early 2020. Before that, I was an ESL teacher for a little bit more than 7 years. In different contexts, there was a significant chunk of it that was more towards preparing students to go into credit classes. I taught classes that had agreements with colleges where if they passed the ESL classes, then they could move into the college, the credit classes at the college. And I taught TOEFL classes for a while, which is the English proficiency tests that a lot of schools ask for foreign students. Just some terms that I might use, and this is not to define them, this is just a weird way that I use language and I might be confusing with. So ESL student, ELL, non-native speaker, I will probably end up using these kind of interchangeably. They don't mean exactly the same thing. ESL just means English as a second language. ELL means English language learner. English language learner. This ESL student is kind of outdated, because the idea is a lot of the students, this isn't their second language. It could be their fourth or their fifth. So English language learner is more general. But I used ESL for 7 years, so it's really hard for me to not say that. And then non-native speaker is just kind of it is what it is. So I'm trying to use this a little bit more, but I'll switch between the two. Credit and non-credit class. When I'm talking about non-credit, if I bring that up, I'm basically talking about anything in adult ed. Continuing ed is non-credit too, but that's just in my head. Sometimes I forget that. And then credit would be anything, on the arts and sciences, credit-bearing stuff. Okay, so just to get a sense, I was talking to Jim a little bit about this, and I've talked to some of you before, but what is your situation? What is your experience with non-native speakers of English in your classes so far? Have you had students more and more speaking that are non-native speakers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I have every semester. I have at least 2, sometimes more.
It's increasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes I wonder why they're not in ESL. They're saying because they're struggling so much, and then there are others that are very fluent, but are still learning the language.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of that might be elective. They choose to go in one or the other. I know that you haven't started teaching for us, but Are you coming from teaching somewhere else where you were doing it?
No, I worked at a hospital for 26 years.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So then, next question. In what ways have these students enriched your classes? Like, what have they brought to the classes that is, like, exciting or interesting?
Yeah, I have a girl this semester from Cambodia,
Mhm.
and we were talking about landmines and the problems, and she was able to bring in information about that. Another girl from Serbia, and so she was, kind of an artist. You've seen that, some of the work that she does.
Oh,
I think they bring a whole lot in.
Yeah.
And I think it helps to make the other students more aware of the struggles that they might be going through themselves, as well as this other person.
Yeah.
But, I try to, because I teach reading language arts, I'm able to bring in articles that are appropriate.
Yeah.
You're doing math, so it's
Yeah.
a little different. But in my class, I bring in stuff
Yeah.
so that other students can start to see where are they from, what does this mean. It makes it more fun.
Yeah, perfect. That's a really
Yeah.
good idea, and that's good for the non-native speakers.
It
too.
is.
I think introducing their culture
Yeah.
to the group is
Mhm.
very beneficial.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Slides are not. I haven't.
Oh, they're not advancing for
Yeah,
you?
because probably we didn't share screen, right? So what do you share window?
I shared window, but it should
I
still.
think you need to share screen.
Oh, okay.
Because we did that yesterday. Yeah, so
Alright.
sorry, let's try.
Do you want to? Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll let you. Well, I'll keep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, the last question I was going to ask, probably, what challenges have your students been having in the class?
Well, I don't have a lot of non-native speakers that I've really had in the math, but when I did the pharmacy tech last semester, except for one, 4 of them were from different countries. And so in some ways, they would say, well, we don't, do it this way. Or, they talk about what they did in their country, even the differences in pharmacy.
Yeah.
If you just could buy whatever you wanted, just go and get it. They also said that we use a lot more drugs, like we're, when their kids had colds, they just treated them.
Yeah.
Although I think we're especially sensitive now, after COVID, that you just go to the doctor. But anyway, but the challenge they had was pharmacy's like a whole new language anyway.
Yeah.
And they had to translate things back, and into their language. Using the Google Translate, or even terms I would use, I had to explain because it wasn't familiar, to them.
Yeah, and in math, from my perspective, aside from the vocabulary, which is super essential, I have them come to the board to show us how they would do it in their country.
Oh, okay, like processes?
Oh,
Okay.
and the big difference.
Mhm.
Like how we do long division
Uh-huh.
is totally different
Yeah.
in different Morocco
Yeah.
or what other country.
Yeah.
So the process is different, but not just the process, but sometimes they have a better way of solving a math
Yeah.
problem than the way we may present it
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
I also find things like with discussion boards, sometimes they feel embarrassed
Mhm.
because of their language. And I've even had, I've had 2 of them now where they first send it to me, go over it,
Mhm.
then they copy and they
Yeah.
paste it back into the discussion board, because that's something that everybody can see.
Yeah.
And especially if they're a high-level student,
Uh-huh.
they're embarrassed,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
their speaking skills, I'm just referencing to the hospital.
Uh-huh.
My husband is a non-native speaking.
Yeah,
But,
perfect.
But that in the hospital, like their email, if they had to send a formal email, they were very uncomfortable with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because they could speak much more fluently than they could write.
Uh-huh.
And I had someone who would always, well, this is important, I'm gonna send it to a doctor, can you
Mhm.
look at it first?
Yeah.
And then I'll send it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. My partner is a non-native speaker of English, a first-generation student, and that comes up. And it's not that they don't have the information, and it's not even that they can't present the information clearly. It's just they don't necessarily have the like prepositions that we would use in the right spots or something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
So I am a strict ESL teacher.
Yeah.
So one thing I don't have challenges.
Mhm.
My whole class is a challenge. So I teach beginning conversation, and I also teach ESL level 1.
Uh-huh.
And so one thing I can say that I've tried to change this semester in my instruction is to push my students. So if we're sitting in the computer lab, I'm trying to teach them how to send me emails more often,
Yeah.
so that we can kind of practice that
Yeah.
skill. And even with speaking, we're practicing more in my conversation, and she sees me often. So I'm trying to, every semester I'm teaching them a new skill when we're teaching the content, especially students who had to repeat the course, because I want them when they're coming to some of their classes to have a better skill because they repeated the course.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can say we're working on that confidence of the email, because
Mhm.
I think they do have it, they're just not confident
Yeah.
because it's not their native language.
Yeah.
And so I am noticing that the more we practice it in class, the better, like the discussion boards.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do spend a lot of our time in the class. I might have a session where we're just practicing the discussion board and responding to each other based on some of the content that we're doing. And but that is a challenge at the level 1 level.
Yeah.
But it's just keep building on their vocabulary in the content area that they have with you, because I know that the more they have the vocabulary, the better that they become,
Oh, yeah.
and the more confident that they become. Even if it's just something as simple as, I know one of the instructors last time we talked a lot, I just talked to her before I got here. She has this little ball that she sometimes throws at them,
Uh-huh.
and they have to shout out nouns.
Uh-huh.
Or they have to shout out something, and even if it's like math, make them shout out a math term so that
Yeah.
they can remember, and they don't have that time to kind of think too much about
Yeah.
it. And I think that kind of helps.
That's true. Yeah, perfection can become like kind of an obsession sometimes,
Yes.
like instead of just like getting something out there.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Those are great. Thank you. Thank you for all those. So one of the things that, I was doing when I was kind of putting this together was like, well, like this is all kind of secondhand. So like I mentioned, my partner is a non-native speaker and was a first-generation student. She did and she got her whole bachelor's degree in America. She finished it in 2020, which was a really depressing time to finish your 4-year degree. But and she started in community colleges. She started at Kishwaukee down near NIU, so she was in all of the different systems. And so I said can you just write down a bunch of things that you wish the teachers in your credit classes had known or done? And so here are a bunch of things that she said. She said, when we're quiet, it means we're thinking. It doesn't mean we don't know. Don't assume we know things about American culture, even if it's Titanic. We aren't children. Give lots of examples. Ask 2 or 3 times if you don't understand us. Learn a little bit about our cultures. Examples using our cultures always make us excited. Make rules with the whole classroom in mind, not just the largest group. She said that one was a little bit more for when she was taking ESL classes. And then use your imagination for communication. So, I didn't feed her any of these, but they kind of line up with the general areas that I was thinking of to kind of talk about general recommendations for working with non-native speakers in classes. So I'm going to talk about what kind of general things to keep in mind for non-native speakers in class. So first one, actively make your class inviting for non-native students. Don't just invite non-native students into your class. So kind of proactively make those changes rather than being responsive when you see, oh, that doesn't work, and then kind of changing it as much as you can, obviously. Recognize differences, not just in culture, but in communication styles, expectations, knowledge bases, lots of the things like that. Make clarity in communications a priority. And respect students' abilities and intelligence. So I'll kind of go through all of these. So first, like I said, making the class inviting. I'm not especially the people that we're talking that I know. I'm not really worried about that. But like you were saying, Nancy, pay attention to like what perspectives are showing up in your class and like how many. Are they relevant to the lived experiences of your non-native students? And every resource that you use is going to be more relevant to some students than others, but having that balance, is important, and it makes people feel like, included, especially if it's a consistent, variety of different perspectives rather than like, all from one perspective, then on one day we have from this perspective and then we go back to normal. So yeah, that can help a lot. Consider the examples you give in your explanations. Who are they aimed at? Like Titanic, and there's a lot of things. She gave a bunch of other examples that people assumed. I think James Bond. They was talking about like somebody kept talking about James Bond and like just stuff that is like we would think is really basic culturally, and I'm horrible at this because like that's how I make references to that all the time, even to her when I know that she doesn't understand something. But yeah, I mean, it can be kind of alienating if everybody is on one page and another person is like on another. Yeah, just basically, can students see themselves in your class? Another way, yeah. What meanings might materials carry for people coming from another culture that they don't to someone originally from here? The example that I was kind of thinking of is like, like the Japanese rising sun flag, like with it's the red sun, but then like with all of the things coming off of it. Like, so for Japanese people, like that's kind of a symbol of pride, and it kind of means like, yeah, we're fighting, we're the Japanese, but like for other Asian countries, it's a symbol of like colonialism. And so like there have been like movies where there's a character that's wearing that on their shirt and like it goes over, like I wouldn't even notice it, but it goes over completely different in another country, Now that's not in a textbook, like, but that sort of thing is helpful to keep in mind. And then, does representation of diverse cultures go beyond food, fun, and festivals? I had a professor once that used this. Not that you shouldn't talk about food, fun, and festivals. It's just that sometimes when you're trying to include, or when one is trying to include, any group into a classroom, it's tempting to just go for the most surface level, and I think that's a good way in. A lot of times is talking about food, but I mean, obviously you're not really integrating the culture or representing the culture just with like these kind of top things. Think about other examples of like, values and, history and like different perspectives and things like that, like kind of deeper cultural things that you can make people feel like really involved in. And then ask for information, don't assign it, which again, I wouldn't worry about in general, but it's like one of those things that, especially for countries, I mean, like, I had this when I was in Korea a lot of times, is that people would tell me a lot about America. Like they would come up to me and they would just be like, oh, you're like this, and you're like this, and you're like this. And I'm like, well, maybe. Like some of us are, some of us aren't, and I think sometimes, like, especially like, with countries like Mexico or something like that, that we see Mexican people all the time in America, we can feel like we know them, and so we can just kind of say, oh, you're this, so this, and, don't assign that to students, gather it from them. Okay. Just like in general, I think it's important to think, like I said, as much as possible to do these in the planning for the class, rather than just like, kind of making these little changes after a student might bring it up or something. And the main reasons I say like that is first cultural differences. So, there are some cultures where students will tell you what they don't like about your class. Like, yeah.
Well, two examples.
Yeah.
One is the handshake.
Yeah.
We handshake a lot in this country.
Yeah.
Not other countries that take it as personal offense.
Yeah.
And the other one, and this has to do somewhat with religious beliefs in a culture.
Yeah.
would be a hug.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
physical contact is a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, some students might feel super comfortable to like walk up and say like, could you do less of this and more of this? Some students would never do that. You know, they would think like going up to an instructor and making a suggestion would just be like extremely rude. And so, you know, they still feel that way, but they're never going to be able to communicate it. And then, you know, there's an inequity there if you're just, you know, waiting for the students to come forward and present that to you. Other one is power dynamics. And yeah, Kara.
Yes, even I had to get out of the phase of the word teacher because I hear it all day when I'm in little kid.
Oh, okay.
And all of my students call me teacher.
Yeah.
And all I hear is teacher,
Yeah.
teacher. And I'm like, you don't have to call me teacher.
Yeah.
You can call me Kara here.
Yeah.
But they will not call me Kara. They will not call me by my first name. And then they call me teacher. And then they also ask to go to the restroom. Wow.
Yeah, I've been.
Yeah, you're right.
They are so polite that they will raise their hand so they go to the restroom. You don't have to ask where to go to.
Yeah.
They will excuse themselves and raise their hands to ask them to go to the restroom often.
Yeah.
Doesn't teacher feel respectful? I mean, I love it.
I do, but I hear it all day.
I hear it all day, but to me, it's kind of like they're showing. To me, it's
Yeah.
showing a sign of respect.
Oh, it's absolutely
It is.
right. Yeah.
But even sometimes I was telling them the last time I was in here, they want you to know that they are trying to. So
Mhm.
sometimes they want me to check their work in the moment.
Mhm.
So they want you to know that they really are doing a good job and they want to succeed.
Mhm.
And so they want to make sure that you know that they're doing it. So it is a sign of respect because they want you. I have some that, oh, I can do this, but then I have some that are like, can you check my work?
Yeah.
And they want-
And the other thing I was thinking about is, I used to give a lot of my readings were really geared to U.S. American
Mhm.
history because this is what we're trying to do. And I came to the realization that for these other students, and there's always 2 or 3, it's kind of like it's the same thing, you know. I mean, it's like it's Martin Luther King.
Right.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
And for them, these are not important people to them. These, you know, so I've been doing a little
Yeah.
less of that, and we're conscious of bringing in something different.
Yeah.
So that I don't do that as often.
Yeah.
And I think that's just important, you know, because you
Yeah.
can just see that. Now, the other thing is, all right, not non-native, but age difference.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I'm 71. Okay, so I say things and they kind of look at me like they have no clue,
Yeah.
literally, what I'm even talking. Susan, I'm sure this happens with you,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's a phrase and it's kind of like, it's like this.
Uh-huh.
And it's not only non-native, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And so I try to be more aware of
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just use the ones that I think are cute and funny.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, all those things, to be aware of all those different kinds of people out there. And I want them all to feel totally welcomed, no matter what.
Mhm. Yeah.
We're talking about the age difference, it is kind of a different culture. But
Oh, it is.
I've had older people call me Miss Susan.
Yeah.
You know, because they
That's
felt like they had to say that and not just call me by my first name. So
Yeah.
I kind of put it out there at the beginning. You can call me Susan, you can call me Miss Susan, you can call me Miss McCartney.
Yeah.
And then they choose what works for them.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's a good approach. I prefer to be just called by my first name. It makes me the most comfortable. I never liked teacher,
Yeah.
but if a student is going to be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
you know, going by the first name, then I'll let them, you know, but I don't prefer it, but yeah, I like the option. I mean, you guys have been kind of giving out examples, but like any more thoughts on ways that we can proactively make classes inviting for non-native students?
I know one way, like when they're doing introductions and like my final project, I kind of changed for my beginning conversation classes
Yeah.
to let some of my students who speak the same language or from the same country, they're doing their final project on their country together
Mm-hmm.
and kind of grouping them with that buddy system
Yeah.
so that they can feel more confident in the class.
Yeah.
Or even if, I know you guys' class are a little different, but giving them a buddy kind
Yeah.
of helps. And it's like we kind of talk about a mentor, different programs, because they might need that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because their goal is to, we talk about it all the time, is to come to Triton eventually. They do want to take classes here. And I tell them all the time, because I'm a SPED teacher during the day, I'm like, I want you to be successful. This is the goal here is, like last night we talked about goals. Their goal, some of them have businesses, and I have a student who owns a towing company and a printing company, and he wants to learn English so that he can expand his company. So he wants to take more classes here, and I think that they do need a buddy on the Triton campus so that they can get there and achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And I tell them, that's what I want for you. I want you. I'm like, sometimes you're gonna come here, and we joke around sometimes a lot in class. But we have a student who he wanted to be grouped with someone in a different language anyway. And I'm like, oh, so now you speak 3 languages because you're in a different group. But he can catch 1 to different things.
Yeah.
He's been here a while. So it's just like once they get comfortable, they're comfortable being in different groups. So I think that if they had a buddy in your classroom that spoke a different language, that might kind of help them in your classroom.
And I think that's a great example of like a way that these sort of changes that you make kind of thinking about non-native speakers can help everybody in the class, right? Because if you set up a buddy system in your class where everybody has a buddy, whether it's like an ESL class or a GED class or a credit class, you know, of course it's going to be super helpful for the non-native speakers because they have like, you know, kind of permission to be included and they're like, they've got a contact. But like, I mean, who isn't that good for in the class? You know, if somebody's not as good with technology, if they, you know, are older and they have trouble understanding the references or something like that, you know, it's good for everybody if you introduce that sort of thing. So that's great.
One of the other things I also like to do is Americans in general are lousy at geography because they have not been teaching it for years. I mean, honestly, very little geography. And so whenever an opportunity comes up, I might have those students that say, hey, why don't we pull a map up and come up and tell us about your country.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every time they will do that.
Yeah.
Because they're so excited to share where they're from. And then it's a way for the rest of the class to become aware. I mean, literally, we have a girl from Serbia. They have no clue where Serbia could possibly be.
Yeah.
Right? And so I find that to just be very inviting.
Yeah.
And the other students like it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not teaching math, so I have a lot of other things I can get away with.
Yeah.
Right? Because I take advantage of all of them. And I learn with them as well.
Those are great examples. The next one that I was going to talk about is recognizing differences. And we kind of talked about some of these. Just avoid assumptions about knowledge or ability of any type. You know, it's something that we're trying to become more and more aware of, but there is no basic knowledge, in the world. There's no basic information that everybody is supposed to know. You gave the example about, the same historical figures that don't have the same relevance in other countries. My partner was telling me about an ESL class that she was in a long time ago, and the teacher made a reference to George Washington, and a student didn't know who George Washington was, and he was just like, well, he's the first president of the United States, and the student was Saudi, and he was like, okay, name any leader from my country in the entire history, and so it's there is this kind of, obviously, and it's natural as a human to kind of have that, well, but my thing is normal, right? But it's not, and they might not have the thing that you have, but they have something else. They might know where different things are on a map, and they taught geography when I was in school, and I'm lousy at geography. So I think, that sort of thing, just being closer to other countries and not having a country so big where you never see any other countries, can make you more aware of that sort of thing. Don't assume they know specific information. Cultural things, Jim, your comment about physical touch and things like that, I think Carrie, teaching ESL, I'm sure you've gotten situations where there's something is interpreted as rude, between two students or between teacher and student, and it's not rude, it's just it's just, you know,
Difference.
speaking style, it's a cultural difference. Personal space. You know, some people stand very close, you know, and again, they're not being creepy. That's just the way that it is. Levels of formality, you know, talking about the teacher versus first name. And then a big one is habitual. And I'm sure you guys, even for the non-native speakers in GED classes, you know, if nobody taught you how to study, then you don't know how to study. You know, if studying is different, if the information that is treated as important in your country is different, then you're not going to know what to look for. You know, you can pay exactly the same amount of attention in class, but you're like, you know, students from certain countries would say like, okay, I need to pay attention to the numbers in this. You know, in math, obviously that's important, but like, you know, for language arts, I would say a lot of times that's the least important stuff are the specific numbers, but it really depends. But yeah, Cara.
I always say this too, because I teach ESL in the younger grades and CPS too. And so I always say this, I always remember that, especially in Hispanic culture, some of the students stopped school in about first or second grade.
Yeah.
And so then they come here to this country as adults, and we have to reteach classroom expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just thinking, like in a GED program, because I have a student in my ESL class now who told me that he stopped school a long time ago, and he's 21.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about goals and things like that, and he didn't have it when he first came to the class. And now, this was what we're in week 10 or 12 or so. And now it's so exciting as a teacher or educator in both worlds to see that he finally has goals because the class has been talking about it.
Oh, I love
He's
that.
talking about opening a restaurant and things like that. So you can tell through the material and the conversation with the rest of the class, he is learning those things and through his brothers. But it's just crazy to see that we have to teach them the expectation of, and again, have to be human.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that they had a journey to get here.
Mm-hmm.
They're more excited as individuals than we are as Americans to be here.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I always remember that you have to be human.
Yeah.
To teach these courses like the GED because they really want to be here and they really want to succeed. And that's my favorite part of like my day coming here. Like I tell people I teach this for a hobby. This is not for a paycheck for me because I really enjoy seeing their smile and how they get so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if I tell you how many of them are so excited to take your classes. That's why I came. I didn't really need to come here because I just took a training here.
Yeah.
I went to TESOL and learned so much about this stuff.
I know.
So
yeah,
I'm like really excited. I just
yeah.
came here to let you guys know that they are ready to come to the GED program. And I'm trying to get them as prepared as possible because they really look forward. And she knows, like, we took classes last week, my class did. They want to succeed, and I don't know how hard. I just really want them to work hard to get there. They're ready. They want to be successful in your program.
Yeah.
And so, team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when I was finishing high school and going into undergraduate, I heard a lot like, you know, when you go into college, they're going to expect you to know how to do this, or in college, like if you're in this class, I expect you to know how to do this, and it's like, okay, well, they don't, you know, and so like and I think that attitude is kind of changing a little bit. I hope it's changing a little bit, but you know, okay, do you want the student to succeed? Is it important to you that the student succeeds? If it is, then they don't know that. What are you going to do about it? Like, and how are you going to make those adjustments? You know, whether it's a buddy system or, you know, any sort of thing. I mean, I think a lot of American students don't know how to take notes or study, so I think like some of that stuff would be beneficial to everybody. Right. I kind of talked about this. Any knowledge is basic. Something obvious to you that might not be obvious to someone else. We talked about all these, just kind of some questions to think about. And once again, you guys have given lots of, yeah, go ahead.
You know what else I think is super important, because I teach a bridge class.
Sure.
And if you can get the students, whether it be in a bridge class or a regular math GED or language arts, to kind of create a cohort
Mm-hmm.
and exchange, so they can exchange with one another's whatever method they want to use,
Yeah.
either ideas, and it works.
Yeah.
It works big time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the students are better at answering the questions than the
Mhm.
person at the front of the room.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard really good things about, exchanging phone numbers, like setting
Yeah.
up chat rooms where
Yeah.
students have like text chains or something. And then the good thing about things like that is if you're a non-native student, then you're getting all of this practice of like conversation for fluency, just having to kind of speak to make yourself understood without thinking about everything being perfect all the time. Getting those experiences of, oh, I said something, I didn't say it perfect, but they still understood what I was saying.
And they need someone to lean on,
Oh yeah.
because they feel alone,
Yeah.
isolated
Oh, absolutely.
in some cases.
Well, I mean, it's easy for that to happen, especially in, if you're in like let's say I'm an English speaking student in an American class, it's all of us students and then the instructor. In an ESL class, it's the instructor and then all of the students from different places, but there's kind of an expectation that we're all kind of in the same situation. If it's a credit class, a GED class, then it's the instructor, all of the native English-speaking students, and then this smaller group here of students who are non-native speakers. So that can be very isolating, and it can be very much like, oh, I'm not part of the real class. I'm kind of here, I don't belong here. So it's a great point, those sort of cohorts, those sort of like relationships and that sort of thing. Okay, I've just got one slide about this one. Non-native students, as you know, if you've worked with them, they may have strong accents or make unfamiliar word choices. Maybe not, but they may. A lot of times I think unfamiliar word choices can be kind of a bigger problem than accents, because like I think, we're kind of used to hearing accents, but just those sort of things where it's those phrases that we say quickly and we're used to hearing one word. It's really interesting the way that like the brain will pick up whole meanings of sentences from just like little pieces of sound, and if they don't give that little piece of sound, it can like throw everything off. So give time to answer. Like I said, like it doesn't mean they may need more time to process, especially if they're translating something in their head, processing that like that answer into their language, translating that into English again, and then giving it. So that's why sometimes it can be nice to kind of like cycle asking questions rather than just like only yelling out answers, because those students can kind of get trampled over. Jim.
Yeah, a good example is you have to be super patient, because if you have, they'll sit there and they'll say, and they're thinking to try to find the words, so you have to just chill.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Relax.
Yeah.
And let them process like what you're talking about, their thoughts, so that they can speak them coherently.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel better.
Yeah.
One other thing too, I think is important. You're not just teaching a subject, but you have to make yourself available to help them with other things that are going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I had a lady, she's from Mexico, and she needed help with applying for a new job, filling out the W-4 form, and she was having all, with the DocuSign and all that.
Oh, I know.
And she had like 15 things to do on the screen, and that one was still red.
Yeah.
So you have to sit with her and then explain what an ITIN number is. So.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that makes a student feel welcome. I'm sure. Yeah. Wow. That's great. Yeah.
It's very intimidating.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
It's very intimidating.
Oh,
Yeah.
the forms they have?
It
Is
just
that
makes you want to say forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Me too, even.
Me
Oh,
too.
yeah, seriously. Yeah,
Great English
absolutely.
speaker.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't get this.
I was gonna say,
Uh-huh.
when I was teaching in the hospital, I had a woman who was from Poland, And she spoke well, and she went through the whole respiratory program, and she was a new hire at our hospital, and I was training her, and it took her a long time to like answer things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she was the first one that told me why, you know, and I naively thought it was because she didn't know it. And she said, well, when you tell me, then I have to translate it into
Right.
my language, and then I have to, just what you just said, is translate it back so I can tell you back, you know, and well, no wonder that takes so long.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of brain power.
It is, yeah. It's exhausting.
Right.
It's exhausting. It's okay if you don't understand a sentence at first. I think that's important to mention because I think,
the teacher on that?
yeah. You know, I think like there can be, you know, if a student says something that you don't understand at first, there's an immediate feeling of guilt. You know, like I don't understand, like I'm a bad teacher. I'm like because I'm not aware of that or something. It's okay. That happens. You know, I don't understand. You know, I taught ESL for a long time. I got pretty good at like kind of figuring out things from context. It was never 100% perfect. You can ask again. You know, you can ask a couple times. Don't give up and say like, oh, like anybody else, like, because that's super discouraging. You know, so stick with it. You know, and maybe like sometimes you can kind of coach the student and say, oh, do you mean this? Or do you mean this or this? Kind of give them a pathway to kind of understand it. But don't move on, you know, without understanding. And please don't pretend to understand something. And then, you know, because oh my God. You know, and even I take classes now, and I've had non-native speakers in my classes, like international students, and I've seen professors do that. And the non-native speakers, I can always tell when it's happening, and the non-native speakers never call them on it because they're too nice. But like the instructor just does something like, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then they just move like, and it's just like, come on, like everybody knows, and the student obviously knows. Yeah, go ahead.
And I also think what's important, the instructor needs to get their body from in front of the room and mingle among the class.
100%, yeah.
Because you get, it's not the words that they speak, the expression on their face, you can tell right away that there's an issue. Yeah. Right away.
Yeah.
And I sometimes let the other students get it, and I don't. And I say, okay, tell me then, okay, and take the time so that, because I don't want to get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and do something, because that's almost rude.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, if they're willing to help me, I'm taking the help.
Yeah. And you know, if a student doesn't understand you know, multiple at first, that's fine too. That happens. If they're asking you a bunch of times, like, you know, they ask you to repeat it, you repeat it, they don't understand. It could be that there's just like a phrase in there that is like a key phrase, a couple key words that they're not picking up. Sometimes if you just kind of say it in a slightly different way, that's all that it takes. You know, so go ahead. Yeah.
Or what I do is, if I'm looking at a couple of students don't understand what I'm saying, let's say they're Spanish speakers, that's just an example.
Yeah.
I'll find a Spanish speaker that does understand. I says, would you please translate it for me?
Yeah. I mean,
and I get it now. See, because of the way it's worded, right?
Yeah. It's like the comment from at the beginning, like be creative with communication. You know, it can be rephrasing things. Sometimes it's just like, oh, I have Google, here's a picture. You know, and then like that's it. You know, and you can move on from that. So. Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Where are you going?
One of my students speaks English, but with kind of a heavy accent, and he'll say something to me, and I'll have that look like, and then he'll keep saying it, and finally I realize he's pronouncing it with the Spanish pronunciation, you know, and then I have to go, oh yeah, so he's not going like E, he's going F, you know, and then I'm like, oh, that's what it is, you know, but he's pretty patient with me, actually. But, he seems to understand me, but I don't always understand him. Yeah. You know, so. But,
my husband and I have these conversations.
Yeah.
I'll be like, did and he'll repeat it. Wait, what?
Uh-huh.
You know, because he's 47. He came here when he was 10 from Korea. But there's words that he learned wrong.
Uh-huh.
You know, he interchanges brought and bought.
Uh-huh.
He calls it a hamper, a hamlet.
Uh-huh.
And he said something, he was like, why do we have to do that now? You know, and I said, because, you know, the clothes are getting too full in there. And he goes, you know, the hamlet, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, the what? You know, and we laughed later because he was like, I really could not participate in that argument after I said that. You know?
Yeah.
But we
Good.
just like, there's still time, we've been together 9 years, there's still times I'm like, what did you say?
Yeah.
And sometimes he says things like backwards, you know, and so, and he speaks very good English, but there's still some things that it takes a while.
Yeah.
Well, my son-in-law's from Mexico, and he always talks about vaporub.
About what?
Vaporub. And
Vapor rub?
Vapor rub.
Oh, wow.
Right. But that's, you know, he pronounces it, you know, in that way.
Yeah.
And now everybody in the family calls it vaporub. But they use it for everything, clothes and put it on your feet and everything, right?
Yeah.
So, but now I know what that is, and that's what helps me with my student, because I go, oh yeah, my son-in-law would probably say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Completely unrelated, but do you know how you say kangaroo in Korean? Kangaroo.
Oh.
When I was there, I actually, I had to relearn the word in English because I got so used to hearing it that way, and so it kind of broke my brain. I was just like, wait, which one is it? Is it the syllable? So it's weird things like that.
Just the accent,
Yeah. And then I think this one is really important. This is why I put it last. Respect students' abilities. You know, and obviously we're going to do this, and nobody would not respect students' abilities on purpose. You know, but I think the biggest thing to remember is don't lower the bar in terms of what you're expecting them to do and the goals that you expect them to reach. You know, whatever your competencies that you think are crucial for the class, those are the same for your non-native students as they are for all of your native speakers in the class. You know, if we don't hold high expectations for the students and work to challenge them, I mean, obviously that's inequitable. Like we say, equity is giving every student what they need to succeed, not what we decide they're capable of, right? Because a lot of times, you know, it's easy to make those judgments about language and say, okay, well, you know, here's the assignment, but, you know, you don't need to do this, you can do this, you know, and give them some other thing where they're, you know, and then they're missing out on the benefit of that whole half of the assignment, you know. There are adaptations, you know, that you can make, like with your discussion board, but those students are still writing the same discussion boards, and they're putting more work into it than the rest of the students. So I mean, never do that. There is, and I've used this in a PD before, so you've probably seen this, but there's a strong, well-documented correlation between teacher expectations and student success. So the more you think a student will succeed, the more likely they are to succeed. And vice versa. So it's really important that, you know, not just lip service, you have to really say, okay, they're going to hit these same goals as everybody else. You know, you can make adjustments, you know, not to the goals, but to the way those goals are reached. You know, prioritization is one thing. Which points and competencies are essential in order to successfully complete the course? You know, going back to that, you know, I'm a philosophy professor or something like that, and the student writes something that satisfies all the requirements of the paper. Well, but you know, if you get to this class, I expect you to know how to use punctuation correctly. You know, and then you drill down on that, and it's like, okay, I get it, but you're not a punctuation teacher. And so they're meeting those things. So focus on what's really important for the class. You know, don't like you say with those posts, you don't drill down on the mistakes in there and just say that's a nice post, but you know, fix all of these little grammatical errors. It's because that's not really important. The important thing is the message and being able to get it across like coherently. Distinguish between what you think students should know and what they need to know in order to demonstrate mastery. Because you're not going to give them a whole American English high school education in the course of your one course. Although I think sometimes you guys come close. And varied and differentiated instruction that you guys have given a lot of examples of. Multiple means of engagement, multiple ways to demonstrate proficiency. If a student, you think a student can do something, but they'll do it much better orally than they will in a written way, and doing it orally is not going to take away from, the rigor and like the goals of the assignment, then that's fine. You can do that, and the student will appreciate it. And just like a mix of different things, discussion boards, just like discussions, people, just like students that are native speakers, they have like skills in different areas. And emphasize clarity and concision wherever possible. Like with the syllabus, and I think, for like ESL classes and something that's like really, really, I guess, objective and kind of, I'm trying to think, like non-holistic courses, it's like this doesn't become as much of an issue. But when I was taking like English literature courses, or even the courses that I'm taking now, sometimes those descriptions are so vague of the assignments. And it's like, I understand that you want to leave things open to a certain extent, but in this open-ended assignment, be aware of all of the assumptions that you're making within that. Because if you say like, you're going to write like a 3-page paper, and do it on whatever you want, or like, organize it however you want, but you actually expect the students to have an introduction and a body and a conclusion, say that if you want it to be like a traditionally organized essay or something like that, because, be aware of the assumptions that you're making with the assignments without actually saying them. And when in doubt, just tell the students what you want, they'll appreciate it. Other ways that we can support students to become successful or to be successful in the course without lowering expectations, in addition to the ones you guys have shared.
Yeah, I'm thinking communication.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I'm communicating a lot,
Mm-hmm.
And this term we're going to talk about this. And now, I send texts a lot, I've been doing it the last couple of weeks. And the one person here, I didn't see a lot of work in the system. When I call on him, he's online and he doesn't answer, and he stepped away, but I addressed these topics in a text, and I said, it would seem to me that maybe you're doing something else,
Mm-hmm.
you're not really participating. How does it seem to you?
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't respond to that, but last class on Tuesday, he was asking questions. I don't know if it was just a more interesting topic. I was talking about graphing, but he was asking questions,
Mm-hmm.
and then I called on him again and said, well, what about this? And that was like a highlight of my life.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, the student I thought was forsaken, is saved, So I'll send these texts, and some people I'll say, looks like you're having trouble in this, and somebody might say, yeah, I am.
Mm-hmm.
So then I know.
Yeah.
But they don't always ask, even though we say ask. And when I said, looks like you're having trouble, she goes, no, but what we talked about today, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's, maybe I should be doing that all the time. But I have less students now, I'm down to 11, so I can rip those off quicker than when I hit 20. So, but it's still not an excuse, But I think texting is the way.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Totally.
I agree.
Totally.
And, yeah, and
I
I just
agree.
use my number, you know, I know I've been at a seminar, it's like you can use that. Everybody's got my number, you know, last night when we had to go to the hospital with your son, she even sent me a picture of him in the hospital.
Really?
But I mean, I believed her, but,
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't ask for that, but, you know, so they're very comfortable texting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
And good on you for the phrasing of that too. The like, it seems to me, or I got the feeling, or something like that, rather than like this is my feeling. This is not like this is the thing that you are doing. That's a
Oh,
really
yeah.
good way to put it.
Yeah, after I said it, I go, is that nice?
Yeah.
I said, oh,
Yeah.
I know.
It sounds nice.
oh,
It sounds nice to me. Yeah.
Maybe I should stop texting for a minute.
But Susan, I was
But
just
I
thinking,
just was, this is what I think, what do you think?
Yeah.
and I was just thinking, you know, when you're talking about that student not responding, I'm finding some of them are working.
Hmm.
And you
Oh,
think
yeah.
they're in class and they are not.
No, I know.
So
I
maybe
get
suddenly he was not working on that day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a shame, but it's very hard to tell. You know, why are they not responding? Are they there? What? And finally, I'll get someone say, well, you know, I've been working.
I
Okay.
actually had a student say, you know, I can't answer right now. I'm taking care of a customer.
This is our life.
I can't say that because I was doing another workshop here, and it was saying that it might have been one of the Monday shout kind of things. It said
Oh
that
yeah.
you have to remember that your class might not be their only responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's not even like you have to remember like this is not their country. They weren't born here, and they're still working on like visas and things like that. And so they're working on their GED, they're working on language, and like I have a student, he's kind of falling apart, and he was coming to find out his father had to have emergency surgery in Venezuela,
Uh-huh.
and he was kind of upset.
Yeah.
And we threw him a birthday party because he didn't want to celebrate his birthday and things like that. So we threw him a birthday party in class because he was so sad about everything. He's like, I don't want to celebrate this year. So the class kind of put together a birthday party in class for him because he was so sad about it. It's just like little things. This is not their only responsibility.
Yeah.
And sometimes the little work that they do get is the only work they can have.
Oh yeah.
That he probably was at work, and we've noticed the same thing in our programs.
Yeah.
But they still, I can't say they've gotten better at communicating it to us too. Like, I'm not able to make it today, teacher.
Mhm.
Or sending an email and things like that, or I'll be late. But the fact that you sent the text, I feel like texts have worked a lot better for me too.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So kind of my last thought here is just in general try to practice empathy as much as possible. Imagine as much as you can being in your student's position, not as a way to show pity, right? But as an exercise to anticipate potential barriers and supports, right? Again, I'm very clear. Empathy, not sympathy, right? Sympathy leads to like, oh no, you can't do this. Your life is so horrible. Like, I'll just make it easier for you, right? Empathy is like, okay, well, let me think about what this is like. Okay, here's something that might help me if I was doing that, and kind of working that way and thinking creatively. So just, and it's a general guideline that I'm sure all of you do already, but it's just a general good thing to keep in mind. That's all that I had. Any final thoughts on this whole thing?
This was excellent.
I really appreciate you guys coming. You guys were wonderful, and I really appreciate all the
It's nice to have
Yeah.
us in the audience.
Yeah.
I'm doing the atlas, so I think I have one more hour.
Oh, do you?
Oh wow.
And then the write-up.
Yeah.
It was, in some ways, after I get into it, I'm like, why did I sign up for this?
Yeah.
You know,
I
every
got to drop
week
it.
I'm running
I
here.
couldn't do it.
Too
much.
But then there's a lot of sessions that when it comes, I would have never looked at,
Mhm.
and I go, oh yeah, I don't need to do it. So it made me come and see all the good topics
Mhm.
that we have. There was one with a English professor that was reading from a novel and showing how you get it just, or a short story, but, showing how he uses with his students, how to ask questions and like, they read it out loud. It was just so interesting.
That's great.
but I would have never signed up for it.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
I agree with you. I did it last semester. I loved it.
Yeah, so it was a
That was
lot though, because, and I'm like, do I really need all those hours? But, it's okay. I got through it almost.
Yeah, well, no, that's it, you know,
Yeah.
thanks for coming.
These are
Yeah.
permission slips.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank
Okay.
you so much. Yeah, again, thanks for coming.